The Crusades were a series of religious wars initiated by European Christians between the 11th and 13th centuries aimed at reclaiming the Holy Land, particularly Jerusalem, from Muslim control, following a call by Pope Urban II at the Council of Clermont in 1095 to unite Christendom against Islamic forces. The First Crusade began in 1096, with thousands of knights and peasants marching towards Jerusalem. After a long and grueling journey, the Crusaders captured the city in 1099, slaughtering many Muslim and Jewish inhabitants, establishing several Christian states in the heart of the Muslim world. These newly established Crusader states, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem, became focal points for further conflict. Muslim rulers viewed the presence of these Christian strongholds as a threat, while the European powers sought to maintain and expand their territorial claims in the Holy Land. The Muslim world, initially fragmented, began to unite under leaders like Zengi and his successor Nur ad-Din. However, it was the rise of Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria, that posed the greatest challenge to the Crusaders, with his military campaigns significantly altering the balance of power. In 1187, Saladin recaptured Jerusalem after the Battle of Hattin, marking a turning point in the Crusades. His chivalrous conduct towards the defeated Christians contrasted with the brutality of the First Crusade, earning him respect even from his European enemies and inspiring further crusading efforts. The loss of Jerusalem led to the Third Crusade, famously led by Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. Although Richard achieved notable victories, including the capture of Acre, he failed to retake Jerusalem, negotiating a truce with Saladin. This truce allowed Christian pilgrims to visit the Holy Land, but tensions remained high. Subsequent crusades, including the Fourth Crusade, diverged from their original goals. The Fourth Crusade, for instance, culminated in the sacking of Constantinople in 1204, deepening the divide between East and West. The Children's Crusade in 1212 saw thousands of children and young people set out to peacefully reclaim the Holy Land, driven by religious fervor. Most perished or were sold into slavery, highlighting the dangers of misguided zeal and the tragic consequences of ill-prepared crusading efforts. As the Crusades continued, they increasingly became motivated by political and economic gain rather than purely religious ideals. European rulers saw opportunities to expand their territories, establish trade routes, and gain wealth, leading to a decline in the religious purity of the original mission. The later Crusades, including the 5th, 6th, and 7th, achieved little lasting success, with Muslim leaders becoming more unified and European forces losing momentum by the mid-13th century. The fall of Acre in 1291 marked the end of the Crusader presence in the Holy Land, as Muslim forces reclaimed the last Christian stronghold. This defeat signaled the conclusion of the major Crusades, although smaller crusading efforts continued in various forms in Europe and the Mediterranean for centuries. Despite their failure to maintain control over the Holy Land, the Crusades had a profound impact on Europe and the Middle East. They opened up new trade routes, facilitated cultural exchanges, and introduced Europeans to Eastern knowledge, including advancements in science, medicine, and philosophy. However, the Crusades also left a legacy of bitterness and mistrust between Christians and Muslims, contributing to centuries of religious tension and conflict. The violence and destruction wrought by the Crusaders, particularly during the First and Fourth Crusades, deeply scarred the Middle Eastern world. The Crusades also intensified anti-Semitic sentiments in Europe, with Crusaders frequently attacking Jewish communities on their way to the Holy Land. This persecution of Jews, combined with the devastation of war, contributed to the worsening relationship between Christians and Jews during this period. Military orders, such as the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller, gained prominence during the Crusades, becoming powerful political and financial forces in Europe. Their influence extended far beyond the battlefield, shaping medieval society through their wealth, landholdings, and military prowess. The Crusades played a key role in centralizing European monarchies, as kings and nobles sought to consolidate power and assert control over crusading territories. The wealth and prestige gained through successful campaigns allowed some leaders to strengthen their authority at home. The Crusades also shaped European identity, fostering a sense of Christian unity against a common Muslim enemy. The idea of Christendom as a political and religious entity became more pronounced, influencing European thought and laying the groundwork for later conflicts between Christian and Muslim powers. Architectural and artistic developments in Europe were influenced by contact with the Islamic world during the Crusades. Crusaders returned with new ideas, designs, and techniques, which were incorporated into Gothic cathedrals, castles, and other structures, blending Eastern and Western styles. The legacy of the Crusades remains controversial. Some view them as a heroic attempt to defend Christendom. Others see them as violent and misguided ventures that caused unnecessary bloodshed and deepened divisions between religious and cultural groups that persist to this day. Ultimately, the Crusades represent a complex chapter in history, marked by both ideals of faith and the harsh realities of war. Their consequences reverberated across centuries, shaping the political, cultural, and religious landscape of Europe and the Middle East in ways that are still felt in modern times.